Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. Please do not adjust your monitors. Once again, we are spending just one level in the PS1 version of the game because I find it charming that there is a PS1 version of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. This might be the version that you played, this might be the version that you grew up with, but it is certainly not the definitive version. It's like a scaled down version of the game, and I find it very quaint. I was initially very excited to learn that the PS1 version of the game actually has an exclusive level. It has a level called the Little Big Level, and for half a second I thought this might be like a PlayStation exclusive Little Big Planet tie-in, and then I remembered we're still like 10 years away from that franchise ever existing. No, it's a level where you basically skate around at miniature size, and you're skating around on a table, and you're grinding off of forks and things. It looks really cool, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, this game locks its cheats behind actual career progression when its actual GameCube and PS2 versions do not. The only cheat code it has is a cheat code to allow you to complete your current career objective, which would of course speed up the unlocks. However, it would still take a decent amount of time to do. It would also be kind of a chore, and I have limited time today. Usually I record these on a Sunday. I'm recording this one on the Monday that it's going out. How's it going, everyone? It's Monday! This is a Monday voice that you're hearing. I don't know what I'm doing. But yes, I don't know if there's any PlayStation exclusive characters like there was for free. Ultimately, we're skating as Tony Hawk because, again, no cheat codes or no easy access to the cheat codes to unlock everything right off the bat. If I hadn't already been playing Tony Hawk's Underground, I would be concerned right about now that this would extend to the next entry in the series. But yeah, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, the PS1 version is still quite difficult to control. I also do think, though, it's the easiest to control out of all of the PS1 versions. But definitely the GameCube version is probably the closest I'm used to, because I started with Underground despite going back to Pro Skater 3 later on in life, right? But I do hit the highest scores I've been hitting so far in these videos within this one as we play on GameCube. Look how much nicer this version looks, man. You could release this today. Obviously it doesn't hold up today compared to today's graphics. We've got actual new Tony Hawk remasters to compare this to, obviously. But you could just release this version on Steam, and I think people would be happy with it. In fact, they might be happier than they will be with the remake, because this version comes with the original career objectives. But Boba Fett, wait, hang on, which one wears blue? Jango Fett, sorry. Jango Fett is our skater today. He's our wacky, I guess, franchise tie-in bonus unlock skater for 4. I gotta admit, as someone who grew up in the prequel era, I do prefer how this particular set of armor looks in blue. It is a shame that they never did any, like, franchise tie-in levels. Like, imagine being able to skate around on the Death Star. That would be pretty cool. Maybe they did and I'm just forgetting in a later game, but I don't think they did. But yeah, I'd never really played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 before. It's kind of the one I was missing beyond 1 and 2 as well. Although I've played the remakes of those, so I didn't really count those. And I really love the levels in this game. I didn't really like the Carnival level, but I think I love every single other one. I'm really excited to be able to play these in the remake. They all just have such individual character to them in the way that sometimes the levels in the previous games didn't, because it was just this city and then that city and then another city, and we do kind of go back to that with Underground 2 if I remember right. Maybe Underground 1 as well. I mean, yeah, that would kind of make sense. But in this one you get to go to a zoo, and you get to go to, like I said, a carnival, although that one wasn't really my thing. You get to go to a train yard, which reminded me of a Dave Mirra's BMX 2 level, which, fun fact, I played Dave Mirra's BMX 2 before I ever played a Tony Hawk's game. We got Dave Mirra's BMX 2 as one of the first titles we ever had for the PS2 when we got that, and I remember looking at it and being like, ugh, why did we get like a bike game? Why did we get to like a cycling game? I don't care about this. I'm not one of those kids with a bike. I don't give a shit. And then I ended up playing it for hours. I'll see if we can get that up on the Weekly Waypoint at some point, but if I remember right, I did have some performance issues with that game. To be fair, I had performance issues with this game as well on my completely legal GameCube. You might notice some of them coming up here. Mostly what it just amounted to is I had to skate around the entire level to kind of quote-unquote load it in, and then like you know, just retry my high score and it would be a little smoother. This was the most notorious level for that, but even then you'll still see the occasional frame drop. Just, yeah, there's no real getting around that. Beyond getting a new GameCube, I guess, and that's outside of the bounds of today's limitations and what I'm doing for the video. But yeah, like I said, I've already played some Underground. I don't know how Underground 2 is gonna run. I had this kind of a problem with Underground 1 as well, but I feel like to a lesser extent. But then I've only played one level on Underground 1 so far, so we'll see how that goes. But ultimately, the objective for this retrospective is to kind of just give a little tour of all of the levels and all of the different games and remind ourselves what they were like, and kind of talk about the experience of playing the games as well is kind of secondary, so, you know, I think we'll be okay. If next week's video is something else though, you know why. Now, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't really have anything new to report in terms of gameplay experience this week. I think all I've played this week is RuneScape 3 and maybe some World of Warcraft Classic, but mostly I've just been playing RuneScape and watching either YouTube or Netflix or listening to an audiobook as I do. I've just kind of been chilling in my zen happy place. So we're going to do something a little bit different for our secondary discussion this week. We're going to talk about the upcoming Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. If you didn't see, I uploaded a video this week reacting to the unexpected Switch 1 Direct we had, in which we got the news about the next Tamagotchi game. Tamagotchi? Well, I mean, yeah, we did. I actually meant to say Tomodachi game, but that's also true. And I will also be doing a video like that for the Switch 2 Direct, although I can't promise it's going to come out the same day as the Switch 2 Direct, because, you know, we've just entered British summertime, which means that the Direct will actually be airing 1 hour closer to when I need to leave for work, so I don't know if I'll be able to edit my video in time, sadly. We'll see how that goes. But I do just want to make like a little prediction video, and I figure instead of making that its own video, I might as well roll that into the weekly waypoint so you can watch Jango Fett fall over while we do so. The Switch 2 as a concept is something that for a long time I didn't know if I was excited for. When I first got my Switch, I got it around the time that Super Mario Odyssey came out, so it was probably about 6 months into the Switch's life cycle, and I had just completely ignored the Wii U like I think most people did. But the Switch was my main console for a little bit there after I got it, and you know, I've definitely not played my Switch as much as a lot of people. I'm not one of these Nintendo adults, I guess. And I have a lot of criticisms about the Switch as a console in terms of hardware and performance. You know, I would never buy a non-Switch exclusive game for the system, let's put it that way. I think it's... And, you know, I know it's got the whole handheld element to it, but especially with the Steam Deck being out now, I don't even own one of those, but I think that the Switch is probably the worst way to play multi-platform games. But then that's me coming from the position of I have a good PC, and I have an Xbox Series S, and I have a PS4, even though I haven't really booted that up in a year. I have options, I get that. But what I'll be looking for with the Switch 2 is, you know, being able to... It doesn't necessarily have to compete with a PS5 and the Xbox Series X or anything like that, especially since the next generation kind of like leap has plateaued a lot with this generation. But I definitely want to see the Switch 2 catch up, like, significantly. And I know it's not always the Switch's fault that, for instance, Pokemon games look the way they do, because you can just point to Xenoblade and go, I mean, look, Xenoblade looks nice. But like I said, with multi-platform games, it's really starting to be like, oh, it's even having trouble running the not-so-powerful games. But yeah, me personally, what I'm really hoping for Switch 2 is just automatic, like, improvements to previous games. And you might think that sounds a little fairy tale, but the Xbox Series S and X do that. If you play a previous generation game on the Xbox Series S or X, it will load faster at the very least. There are some things which require more manual patches to improve, like FPS, but still. I'm really hoping they don't go the PlayStation route of charging for upgrades, because that shit sucks ass. But given that they've just unveiled a fairly pro-consumer move with lending digital games, you know, I think there's reason to believe that maybe they won't do that. But yeah, for me, the Switch 2 will have a huge value bump if I literally just have the ability to play my old games on it without the behest of any developer patches, and for instance, see better anti-aliasing. Good god, the Switch is awful for that. Or just run in a better resolution, I guess. I'm just talking about the general grainy look that a lot of Switch 1 games have. If the Switch 2 could just kind of get rid of that, that'd be nice. Another major thing I'm hoping for is the continuation of new consoles added to NSO. Obviously, you would imagine utilizing the Switch 2's better hardware and capabilities. I think it's fairly reasonable to hope for GameCube and DS on NSO. Maybe not at the same time, maybe we'll get one and then the other, but definitely DS, because then we're entering the era that I arrived in when it comes to Nintendo ownership. But I also saw someone mention that the GameCube could be a great way to, you know, expand the catalogue of games available on Switch without demanding new entries, such as Animal Crossing and Super Smash Bros. Melee. And then in terms of just games I'm expecting to be unveiled for the Switch 2 exclusively, I do think we are around, you know, maybe probably overdue a new Super Mario 3D platformer. And while that isn't necessarily one of my most anticipated games ever, I did absolutely love Odyssey. And I heard someone pitch the idea of like a fully open world Super Mario 3D game, and I think that could be pretty cool. Like, obviously open world doesn't inherently mean better game, but I think the idea of applying that to a 3D platformer could open up some fun opportunities, and it could just feel fun and nice. I think it's obviously a given that we're going to see Mario Kart 9, if that is indeed what they decide to call it. I do wonder what they're going to do for Mario Kart 9, because in my eyes Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still like the peak of what a Mario Kart game could actually be. I don't really know what they could do to build upon or improve it. Like, all I really wanted was a Mario Kart which included every level and every racer, and with the DLC we got like a year or two ago, we've pretty much almost got that now. So I guess, yeah, Mario Kart 9 is probably just going to be like, hey look, the physics are a little nicer, the graphics are a little nicer, and we've got new levels. But yeah, I can't really see myself being too crazy excited about Mario Kart 9. Maybe I would if they hadn't done that really cool DLC not so long ago for 8. I do wonder if it's possible for us to get a new title in the Animal Crossing series as well, but I do also wonder if it's maybe a little bit soon for that. I might not expect that for another few years. I am wondering if we're going to get a moment that's like, oh my god, they put Skyrim on the Switch, because if you remember, that was something they showed in the very initial trailer, and that was something which really helped sell both the idea of playing the games you love in handheld mode, and also like, oh, we've got third-party games that people really like. That train of thought does lead me to thinking about how the Oblivion remake has been rumoured to be revealed sometime in the first quarter of this year, and it would be kind of cool if it was revealed in the Switch 2 Direct as like a Switch 2 launch title or something. That is a little unlikely considering that it's an Xbox IP nowadays, but when you consider how Xbox currently feel about putting their games on other platforms, I don't know, I think it is legitimately a possibility. Speaking of games I shouldn't be holding my breath for, I think there's also a chance we could see Dragon Quest XII, because it's been a while since that wasn't announced, and, you know, the previous Direct was opened by Dragon Quest 1 and 2. Clearly Nintendo know that Dragon Quest are a franchise that they can put as like an opener or a closer to a Direct, and it could be a cool way of showing off like a big open world RPG on the new hardware, because I doubt they've got a sequel to Tears of the Kingdom already. That would be insane. But that is also a don't hold your breath, because sometimes Dragon Quest games take a decade to develop. That's an exaggeration, but it feels that way sometimes. Given the previous Direct, I think there's also something to be said for Sony titles making their way to the Switch, although I guess that was more Sony franchises that they might have licensed out to make new titles in, I don't know. But listen, when I first got my Switch, my big unrealistic dream was to be able to play Ratchet & Clank on it, and I think we are closer at the advent of the Switch 2 than we were at the advent of the Switch 1 to that being a reality. So one of my wildcard theories and suggestions for the Switch 2 Direct is Ratchet & Clank, I don't know which one, maybe Rift Apart to show off their SSD, if they have an SSD, I assume they have an SSD. This is when I add that I'm not actually as deep in the tech spec speculation as some other people are. It would be weird if they didn't have an SSD though, but maybe it could be an opportunity for them to finally remake or remaster the original trilogy in a way that isn't buggy and terrible anymore, and then release that on PC as well. I don't know, maybe pretty please, fingers crossed. And then of course, just like an absolute certainty, is an Acclaimed Classics collection, right? No, that's also a wilder wildcard than Ratchet & Clank. We're just getting into wildcard territory here. Something which might be a little bit more likely is either Sega Saturn Classics Collection or Sega Dreamcast Classics Collection, because they did do that Sega Genesis Collection that people don't really talk about all that much, and I think it's surprising that they didn't continue going through the consoles with those. I looked up the Sega Saturn's library, and I don't know, maybe I'll skip over that one, because, I mean, mean, I'm sorry, I wasn't a Sega kid. So maybe I'm being mean, but I don't think there's much there, at least at a glance. But a Dreamcast collection could be cool, right? Oh, and while we're in the realm of talking about publishers making a splash on the new Switch 2 console and being like, look, we're here now as well. Obviously, we talked earlier about Microsoft, mentioning that they want to put some of their previous exclusive titles on multiple consoles. I wouldn't be surprised to see Halo or Forza make its way to the Switch 2. Maybe Halo Infinite on the Switch 2 will be the Skyrim moment if we need one of those. Although of course Halo Infinite is not as beloved as Skyrim. My last great wildcard for the Switch 2 game lineup is the return of Dr. Kawashima's brain training, just to remind us all that the Switch 2 isn't always about bigger, crazier scale games. Sometimes it's about just Nintendo games just moving on to the next platform, and maybe it could incorporate mouse mode. I think we're going to see a fairly exhaustive demonstration of mouse mode and the things that it is capable of. I guess I should also be predicting a new Super Mario Maker, right? Because it would be perfect for that. Like, if mouse mode is going to be the main new gimmick part of this console, then I guess I should be expecting a lot more games making use of it, or a lot more games that would go along with it. But I guess you could argue that would also be first-person shooters like Halo. I do wonder if they might consider adding achievements, because they have not gone away. Nintendo keep trying to pretend that they don't exist, and as far as I know, most people who play Nintendo games don't give a shit about them, so maybe this is a dumb prediction. But I could see them maybe looking into tying them into platinum points and profile unlocks and stuff like they've been playing around with the last few years on Switch. And as someone who enjoys collecting achievements in games, I would love achievements on Switch titles. I think it's a shame that there aren't any. I also think they're gonna make a point of being like, oh, instead of the activity feed like you have on your Switch for like news and stuff, you're just gonna have the Nintendo Today app. Is there anything else? I am basically reading off of a bingo card I made, so if you follow me on Blue Sky, you might be really bored by this video. I did put a Mii redesign on there. I don't know how feasible that is. The Miis in Tomodachi Life have ears, but I do think that's just Tomodachi Life doing their own thing like they've done before. Miis have not been very front and center on the Switch, but they also haven't gone away, and I think Nintendo might realize how iconic they are. I think the eShop music is gonna be back because, again, in the last few years, there has been a whole movement on YouTube of just people uploading compilations of Wii music and DS music and 3DS music and like little go to sleep playlists and stuff, and I'm not sure if that was such a big deal in 2017. Then again, I'm not sure if that's the kind of thing they would make mention of in a direct. I don't know. That might be more of a Switch 2 prediction than a Switch 2 direct prediction. I think there is room for them to announce a new first party IP, although I think it'll be something more like ARMS than it'll be something like The Legend of Zelda. I think it will launch in June like everyone else seems to think. That's just a safe bet at this point, and I think it will launch at 379 Great British Pounds. And I'm turning 30 in June, and I'm kind of tempted, depending on what we see in this Switch 2, but also I kind of can't afford it, so it might be a moot hope anyway. Oh, a couple things I forgot to mention, just little things. I think that they will, refer back to the Switch 1 Direct, like with Metroid, to show how much better the game looks on the Switch 2, and I think that their explanation of backwards compatibility will be needlessly exhaustive and time-consuming. Finally, for the free space on my bingo card, I did write down that someone will say, please, take a look. And that's pretty much everything. That was pretty disorganized, my apologies. But that's pretty much all of my predictions for the Switch 2, beyond nebulous things which aren't really fair to predict. Like, I think there will be something that we do not expect. Some old title from the past, some mouse mode demonstration pack-in title maybe, I don't know. Something quirky and a little unnecessary, like, you can also view your Switch 2 home screen through this handy smartphone app, and install and uninstall games from there, but do nothing else. And that will be like a 5-minute thing that they have someone talk about in great detail. You know how it goes. Yeah, ultimately I do find myself pretty excited for the Switch 2 Direct, even though I don't know when I'm going to be able to grab one for myself, or if I'll even have that much of an interest in it. Like I say, if they announce a new Mario 3D platformer, which would be one of the headline things they could announce, I don't think I'm going to go, oh, I need this right now, I'm going to spend £400 on this. But I think in the last 6 months or so, I just have been using my Switch more. I have been playing it more. I don't really know what the impetus behind that was. It might just be a natural thing where I'm like, I haven't played these games in a while. But yeah, that is probably one of the reasons why I'm a little more excited about the Switch 2 than I otherwise would be. I am mostly just very, very curious. These predictions are more biased towards what I want to see than what I'm necessarily expecting to see, hence... Christian, why aren't you predicting Pikmin 4 or something? It's because your guy has not played Pikmin 1, 2, and 3, or 4. Pikmin 5. Why aren't you suggesting Pikmin 5? See, that's how little I know Pikmin. I do think that with this kind of thing, people tend to predict ports and remakes and stuff, and I do think that with the Switch 2 Direct, Nintendo might want to skew a little bit more to new upcoming titles and maybe even new IP. I think it would be a little bit weird to announce a new console and then be and look, now we're gonna get like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, a game which has already been announced for other consoles, you know, I don't know. But then that would be overlooking the whole Skyrim being announced for the Switch in its very first presentation thing. I don't know. I've not been to the future, I don't know what it looks like. Maybe this time next week I'll be looking back on this video and going, oh, you silly goose, you didn't get a single thing right. I forgot to mention with the DS on NSO thing, I think they will be like, oh, you can play it in handheld mode by turning your Switch to a kind of vertical mode and then like, you know, just detaching the controllers and playing it that way and then touching the touchscreen that way. Or, and maybe they'll do some kind of weird controller thing where it slots into, I have no idea. Or you can play it in full screen on the TV mode and use mouse mode to click the touchscreen. I think that will be why DS has waited for Switch 2. Anyway, before we go, we've just got time to talk about what I've been reading this week. And besides The Well of Ascension, the second Mistborn book, mostly it's been DC Comics. I finished the Metal, okay, it was called Dark Knights, Metal. I finished that event, and I think it definitely got away from itself at the end there and became very incoherent as a narrative. I will always love it for giving us the Batman who laughs and the other evil Batmans, but yeah, I don't know. I think then it got to the point where it had to solve the problems it started, and it just got a bit generic and D-tier character-y. It was definitely better in concept than execution. And then I've also read Doomsday Clock, which is kind of what I thought would be the sequel to the Watchmen thing, but it's more of like a Superman comic with Watchmen characters, just to be like, look how different our take on comics is, and it doesn't always need to be this edgy and nihilistic, but ultimately that was good as well. It was a good read. Now I'm back to just reading through the Flash. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will catch you next week for some Tony Hawk's Underground, or maybe something else, we'll see.